Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hello, welcome. Welcome to the show Connected. I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly. And welcome to the very end of January. It is January 30th. And yesterday we celebrated the Lunar New Year, also known as Chinese New Year. And so this is a time where it's the new moon, it's the first new moon between after January 20th. And so there's usually a space right in there where the new moon comes in and it marks the new kind of like calendar year. This is where we're moving into that new year. And so we're also just right a few nights prior to what is known as Candlemas, February 2nd. It's the one I was talking about. It's like a cross-quarter holiday where every 6 weeks we have a different celebration of time. This is the wheel of the year. So this is also known as Imbolc. So that's a Celtic word. And it's the time of the great quickening. And what I say about quickening, it's the time where we've gone through the reflection of winter solstice. And we have finally gone through the process. And of course, this is kind of like a repeat of many things I've been saying throughout the show, and especially last week, where we're coming to that point where we've reflected from the death process back during Halloween and the Day of the Dead and all the death celebrations. And so we were able to reflect. So from Halloween to winter solstice was the time of the death process where our material bodies move back into wave form. It's where a particle moves into wave. And then winter solstice is that time where we're back into our spirit form, no longer in these physical bodies. And so we play this out every year. It's a recapitulation of life, death, rebirth from each human incarnation through each year, right? And so it's the calendar of the year. And we just finished moving through the reflection time of wave energy. And now we're coming back into particle energy. And it's during this very holiday that comes up on February 2nd, that it's the quickening seed, it's the reflection of what we've learned from the last year. And it's like, oh, I could really strengthen this quality about myself. Or this is something that I was really tested in my last year, and I want to grow stronger. I want to really bring this different energy into my being so that I can expand, I can be more empowered in the way that I meet life by cultivating this new quality. It could be a virtue. It could be many different things, right? It's just a way of us leveling ourselves up. But it's through the reflection of winter solstice that we recognize that, right? So we say, this was the theme, and this is where I did really well last year, but these are some areas that I really struggled or really was at the effect of certain things. And if I could only be more patient, or if I could only have done this differently, right? And so it's about that we're calling in, and it's about that we bring into our awareness. So really, this is all about growing our own consciousness. Now, I want to also state that when we talk about moving into a little reflection of course, last week's show and about changing of the guard. Now, for me, it's changing of the guard, but for many of you, if this is the first time you've ever heard of this, it'll be also calling in your very first guard, because these are our allies, our energy allies that we can be working with who will support us as we want to expand ourselves consciously. This is all about it's really about building and cultivating a greater sense of awareness of who we are in relationship with the world, right? So last week I started talking about guides and guardians. And at the very end of last week's episode, I just snuck guardian in there at the very end. And so I want to start with guardian so that we can move forward, because for me, my relationship with guardian could also be different. And I want to just recognize that as we talk about these allies, you may know them differently in the way that I share about them. Or maybe it's the first time you ever heard about it. So this is the first understanding that you're getting. However it is, I just want to remind you that there's innumerable ways that we can experience these energy allies. And so I'm going to bring forward the way that I've had them in my life, but you may have other teachers, or may have other experiences, and you really kind of go with what is right for you. We are all in this for our own personal journey, right? And it's through these experiences that we grow. And each one of us is going to have our own very specific experience in a way that it is going to be different. So, if we're walking with a guide, and I'm walking with, let's just say, I'm just going to pick an animal guide, right? Let's just say I'm going to be walking with the raccoon. And somebody else is walking with the raccoon. We're going to have a very different experience with the raccoon. There may be some very similarities because the raccoon has certain type of energy, but how we interpret that, of course, is going to be our very own unique way. So any one of these allies, as I introduce them, is going to be a very unique relationship for you if you choose to invite them into your life, invite them into being a guide for you. Now, again, I'm going to go back to guardian, because for me, guardians have been past guides who are no longer guiding us in this lifetime. They've guided us in last lifetimes, but they're still part of our team. They know us. They're here protecting us. And they're kind of, and I'm going to just share some ideas, but I want you to know that it's not limited to what I share. You may have your own version of this. And that's what I want to say is like, there's no one way to talk about this. There's no one way to understand it or be with it. It's going to be your own unique way. So for me, guardians have been our past guides who continue to hold us in some sort of protective mode, or they help remind us of what we've already learned in our past life incarnations, kind of like energy of like, oh yeah, I remember that. So they're kind of like just gently there holding us as we go through our lives, reminding us, protecting us. And we can also have different, so some people might feel like, oh, well, this is my my angel is my guardian. And we all have guardian angels too. And so those ones are definitely here to help guard us and protect us as well. But I'm going to just invite you to see if you can kind of find that energy shift between who once held you in last incarnations and who's still with you, but not so actively, right? And so like in different wisdom traditions, like one of my temples is in the Star House in Boulder, Colorado. And it's kind of like I grew up in that temple. That's my temple. And around that temple are these guardian stones. And the guardian stones are also connected to the zodiacs. And there's much about those stones, but they're very much an energetic that just holds us, and we can go and be with them and we can communicate and connect with them, but they are energies that we have been working with, whether we've been knowing it or not, based on our incarnation, our blueprint, our astrology, all of that. So we already have a relationship with them. We just may not remember that or know that, but they're there to guide us, right? Now, they may not be as actively involved in our lives as maybe a angel guide. So we can say that guardian angel is more of a guide. It may be kind of bringing us more actively to certain places for us, people, places, experiences. Remember, I talked about how the soul also brings us to those energies. It's kind of like an energy magnetism. The soul brings us to these places, and our guardian angel helps us kind of recognize those things. And it may not just be our guardian angel. We can call many different beings, energy conscious beings to us. So I started again last week talking about this practice. And usually it's a meditation that I do at the beginning of any time I do my spirit work. Now, of course, I started talking about it and I went into the details and it took up the whole show. So we only got to look at the, we're going to call it the sacred cross, but we got to look at the earth realm. And so when I talk about the earth realm, I'm talking about the directions. I talked about south with fire. So I'm also talking about elements. And I talked about, so we had south with fire and our fire allies that connect with the fire. Now, our earthly allies, we can look at through the mineral realms. We can look at with mineral stones. We can call in a mineral stone. And here I have an amethyst that I brought just to show. And if you want to work with a stone for a year, you can bring this into meditation practice. I am going to go through these more, like I'm bringing everybody in these last couple of these, like last week in this show. And then I'm going to kind of go through and deepen into each one. But you can call and ask, work with a mineral crystal energy for the year to learn about how that consciousness of this mineral is here to aid us in our development and our conscious development, right? And you can meditate with it and you can work with it in multiple ways. You can get crystal ally guides and books to help learn all about their qualities and how they hold us in our own kind of healing, right? And so we also have plants. And so even working with the plants, and I talked about plant allies at the very beginning, right, kind of before the holidays even. And even like picking a plant and working with it for the whole year and learning about it and using it in your food or making a tea of it and really deepening your connection, putting that plant in your body and mixing it with your own saliva and in your own system and how you can digest it. If it's one of those plants, right? Like you can work with it regularly or learn how to work with it if it's not a plant that you can consume regularly, because there's other things that you can certainly do, right? And meditate with it and build a relationship. And I talked about building these relationships are like making new friends as if they're a human being, where you're going and you're meeting somebody for the first time and you find a connection and you're like, oh, I'm curious that, I feel this great connection with us. I'd like to grow this friendship in a human way, right? We're all different in how we make friends. But this is one of the ways that if I find a connection, I'm all over that, wanting to grow that connection. So we invite these allies to come in and teach us about them. And if we walk with them for a whole year and really consciously work with them, we can learn so much. And throughout our lives, so the changing of the guard, and again, I'm going to get a little bit more into that, is where we walk with one for a year, learn about it, thank it. And then the following year, we reflect during the winter solstice and we begin to move into who do we want to learn about next? How do we grow ourselves, expand ourselves more abundantly, more consciously, more expansively, right? So there's so many of these allies to teach us all these different things about ourselves and how we have that already living within us. It already is living in us, but it's turning on the activation of that. It's like turning on the light. The light is there, but maybe you don't know that the light's there. So when we invite it in, we begin to turn that light up, and the voltage of that light begins to, get brighter and brighter and brighter until we really know it within ourselves. So then that's the plant realm. Working with cinnamon, working with chamomile, working with, a tree outside, or however, anything that's connected into the plant realm, you can create that relationship with. Or if there's a certain medicine plant that you're working with, something for our general health, Osha, that's a plant that grows in Colorado or grows in the high mountain range, of the Rocky Mountains. But there can also be like psilocybin mushrooms, where you begin to develop a relationship on a microdosing of really being able to learn how that medicine can rewire some of the, areas that have been programmed that are disconnected. They can help reconnect certain things. So this is where we build that conscious relationship. And I'm going to be repeating myself a lot throughout this podcast, right? Because it's very important that we recognize that that's what's happening, is we're building these relationships, right? So I talked about, again, fire in the south and our allies, water in the west, earth in the north, if we're in the if we're in the northern hemisphere, and then wind or air in the east. But this can all be switched around depending on which wisdom tradition you are connected to, or where you are in the world. Because if you're in the southern hemisphere, north for you is going to be towards the equator, and the equator is where the heat is. So that's where the fire may be. And then the poles, the North and South Pole, is where we connect into the earth moment, the earth element of our beautiful planet Earth, right? The globe. And then if you're connected to the wind on the west and the water on the east, because that is exactly how your life is set up, great. Or the other way around, where the wind is blowing from the west towards the east and the rising sun. So it's really again about how you connect to it, your relationship, which is why it's like, hey, you're going to have so many different wisdom traditions sharing. And of course, all of it is symbolic. So learning the symbolism, that's a huge part too. Where does the symbolism come from? What's it all about? How do I connect more deeply into these opportunities? So I also talked about in the North, we have our ancestors. This is where the bones of those who've come before us lay. So this is where we can also have ancestral guides. I talked about also ascended masters. I call them also, wisdom keepers. Anybody who's been alive and in a human form, we can also connect with in the North. Now, some of these ascended masters we can connect with in the above, and we're going to get there. But I'm just saying that because they've walked on this planet, and because they have had breath and lungs in these flesh bodies, and they've died, we can connect with them in the North. Also, if you are Christian or come from, pretty heavily religious background, and it doesn't just have to be Christian, but I think it's only really within the Christians, is that, you are connected to this different saints, people who have come into your life, or people that have come into the world and have led very noble lives of some sort of service, and they were then somehow ordained I don't think ordained is the right word, but they were moved into, initiated or somewhat into sainthood, right? And so maybe you really connect with some of the actions and virtues of those people. So all of that is in the north. And then in the east, we have the air, and we have um, spirit, the breath, the evolution, and coming in. And we have the minerals in each of those directions that can connect to fire, water, earth, air. We have those plants that can connect to either fire, water, earth, air. We have animals that live within those areas as well. The winged ones, the ones that are flying, the ones that ride the wind in some way, the plants that use the wind for their seeding, right? So they're connected. And when we connect into the depth of that connection, and more so, whole new worlds open up to us. So this is just kind of a recap of what we talked about last week. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to dive back in and deepen into all of these allies that are, and it's really just a structure. There's far more allies available, but I want to give you just kind of like the basic foundation, and you can go from there. So I'll see you back here in just two.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, welcome back. So we're looking at, just looking to see, it seems like I'm kind of, the camera was a little sticky there. So I just wanted to see if there was like an issue going on with the glitch of the filming of this. It's always nice to do a live show, right? I thank you guys all so much for your patience with me in live shows. All right. So let's see. So we just talked about looking at the earth, 4 directions. And when I was working with one of my teachers, and I actually went through this 3-year program up at the Star House in Boulder called The Path of the Ceremonial Arts. And it was a deepening into becoming a modern day priestess, really working with the energies. And one of the tools we learned was about the sacred cross. And the sacred cross is literally like looking, and the way that lives in my body, and the way I'm sharing it with you, is that if you think about the cross arms really incorporate us on the surface of the earth, or us on the planet Earth. So it's the connection of us all around the earth, everything that our great mother holds. So it's that part of us, it's like this blanket that comes around and connects and deepens into this earthly experience, right? So that's why last week we kind of just covered the lateral, right? We covered the horizontal plane of that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move it into the vertical. And the vertical is like when we recognize that each of the four directions works with an element, and how much depth, if you start to go down those paths, is really there. There's so much for you to connect into. There's so much for you to invite. You can see many different allies in all those areas. Now, when we move into the vertical cross, what I like to do is I like to start in our heart, and I move myself down. So here's where we begin to call in the below. So when we call in the directions, the format that I love and have been trained, I've known many. Some wisdom traditions call in 4 directions. Some call in 6 directions. I love the wisdom tradition that I'm most connected to, that is 7 directions. So calling in the 4 directions first, and then I go below. I root myself, anchoring into this great, beautiful planet Earth, Mama Gaia, Pachamama, Mama Tierra, Sophia. She has many, many names, and you can learn these names through different, of course, wisdom traditions. She's going to be called many names, right? And so when we begin to move down into the earth, first of all, we recognize that we're moving into the feminine. This is the feminine energy. And this is also, there's so much symbolism here, so this is a whole show in itself. But we're moving into the great Mother Earth. And this is consciousness in form. So the feminine brings consciousness into form, as we as women, if you're a woman watching the show, we, with the conception of the seed, the egg and the sperm creating form, the energetic of the mother and the father creating the new creation, right? And so this is where consciousness comes into form. And this is where in our 3-dimensional world, we have living form. We can see it. It shows up, the life force of all that is alive. And we can think about the microscopic, organisms even in the dirt, right? And the grasses and all the different life that comes through consciousness into form. Even consciousness into mineral form when we have the amethyst, working with the consciousness of the stones. So this is form. So connecting in to the feminine is connecting also into all the great mothers, connecting into the lineage of what it means to be mother. But also, as we move through just because this, as I start to explain this, it can go in many directions. So try to keep it just bringing it into that place where we can call in our allies, our guides. So we can connect with goddesses here as well. However, I also connect with the pantheon of the lower god and goddesses in the above as well, because what is above is so below. So we can look and see more of because there's also the gods live within the earthly realm as well. And I haven't talked about gods and goddesses yet. And that was the whole show in itself. So that one's coming. That one's in a couple weeks from now. So that'll be after archetypes. And so I'll go definitely into the depth of that more so you understand. So I'm just kind of acknowledging it right now. But if we go in, we can kind of connect into the feminine. We can connect into our goddesses, because throughout history, we have a lot of different types of goddess figurines that have been found within the archaeological record. There's a lot of different types of just the feminine that is found through all sorts of ancient civilizations. Now, of course, the masculine is found there too. Yeah, we definitely recognize there's a goddess culture that comes from that too. So that is, again, part of that show or that podcast. So connecting, knowing that the feminine lives here, we also can connect into the elemental energy of the earth. And so with this, we're looking at the land, looking at land guardians. There is such a thing. And so even like where you live, you have a land guardian and you can create a relationship with it if you wanted to. And also, if you have all sorts of different kinds of things happening on your land, maybe there is some kind of dark energy and you wanted to create a relationship with your land guardian to help protect you on where you are residing and the part of the town or neighborhood that you're in. Because these land guardians will actually occupy large areas. It can be a whole metro city kind of a thing, or it can be, several miles and acres. It could be a whole island of like the Hawaiian Islands even, right? Or any other kind of island. Or the land guardian could be multiple islands depending on how big and small those islands are. So there is these relationships, and part of it is learning how to communicate with them to understand how big their domain really is. But then there's also other energies, right? We have the fairy realm, and they are also conscious beings that we can create relationships with. And, the fairies are, they are very, they have a lot of playful trickster energy. So oftentimes if you're missing your keys or you put something down, the fairies could be the ones, hiding it from you and whatnot. So they're very playful, but they can also be very trickster-ish. So creating relationship with them. There's the elves, the brownies, the sprites. They come from all different wisdom traditions, but they're the nature spirits. And so we can connect into them in different ways by inviting them to teach us about them. We hear this about, we hear about them in fairy tales and fables and lore. And people are like, oh yeah, whatever, that's just fairy tales. That's not real. Well, where do you think they came from? They're not, they're there and they're hiding because our consciousness have gotten far away from being able to connect to them. So for the most part, we're like, yeah, they're not real. The rest of like mainstream society is like, yeah, they're not real. That's just children's stories. However, this is where we begin to build relationship. If you build a relationship and connect into this type of energy, you can have these experiences of literally having relationship with the fairies or sprite or elf or brownie or whatever whatever, and asking it, who are you? And asking them, questions about it. And I'll put on my website, how I put the resources down there. And I will, as I was perusing through the interweb, I found, somebody had already created a whole bunch of questions. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to pull it from what I found on the internet and then put it onto my resource page. And of course, credit whoever wrote that for sure. But this is how we ask and invite these energies to share about them. We have to ask the questions. What is it that we want to know? Where did you come from? Who are you? Do you have a name? Certain types of things, as if you were meeting a friend for the first time, right? So this is that energy of the low. This is the below. This is where we can root ourselves in and really invite this earth energy of all that has come before us. The below is the past. It holds the memory of everything that's come before us. So we can connect into that. We can we can work with the lower world guardians and invite them to, befriend us, show us the way. So these are just different things that you have, that I'm just kind of presenting in this level, right? This way. Now, we can then There's a lot about the below, of just really anchoring ourselves in with all that has come before. But just because of time and I'm wanting, there's a lot more going on as we move ourselves up through these different layers. But there's all sorts of energy beings that live within the earth. There's also like the mycelium energies that are the interconnected networks of plant life. And the mycelium, it comes from the mushroom family, and the fungi, and how it connects into the fabric of the woods, the forests and whatnot. But there's all sorts of different types of networks of communication within the earth itself. And so learning to just kind of play, have a guide that will work with you to understand how earth, energy works, right? Because this is what we're up to. We're learning about this. So finding a guide that can really just begin to open those doors for you in a safe way. So now I'm going to move ourselves up back through the layers. And as we go up through the layers, we have the consciousness of all the stuff that's around us. And so we have energy beings all around us. They're not all just out there. Everything already lives within us. We're just a vessel, right? And so it lives within us, but also lives outside of us. But we're not separate. We're still one and the same. So even if I say it's outside of us out here, it still is inside of us. I'm hoping that makes sense. If not, you can ask me to try to go further into that, and I can clarify that more. But we already are, we're made of the cosmic fabric of life. So everything already, that exists outside of us lives within us already, because we're already connected, right? So it's not like we have to go far. It's not like we have to go all the way up into the highest levels of space, All we have to do is go inside of us, and it's right there. But I'm going to also kind of play with how space, and how as we move through the different layers of our solar system up through our universe, I'm going to just use that as a visual, because we can play with that as well, right? And so as we move ourselves up through these different energy layers, like we have our atmosphere, and then we have our stratosphere. And again, the future and the past are right here, and we're going to talk about that another time. So it's not like we have to go too far to access future and past. So that's what I'm saying, is like everything is right already. We have access to it already right within us and all around us. But as we move through the atmosphere, the stratosphere, the first celestial energy is our moon. And so learning about the moon, and learning about new moon, full moon, first, so the new moon we just had yesterday, and you can still be riding the energy of the new moon. And the new moon is actually a way for us to track. It's a way for us to set up an intention of what we want to do, a goal, an aspiration, and, something that we want to build within ourselves. And then we can track it and work it and build it within ourselves. So these are all our allies that build and expand our consciousness. And the moon is the very first one that we kind of sort of come to in that. And then we have, the new moon, and then there's the first quarter moon, and then there's the full moon, third quarter moon, and then new moon again. And we just cycle that through. So learning about your moon phases, learning about how you can connect into that, and learning about yourself and your own cycles, not just menstruation cycles if you're a woman, but also men have their own moon cycles too, right? So learning at how we can use that energy, that cyclical energy, for our own conscious expansion, awakening, being connected to the life and world around us, right? Then what we do is we come to the planetary alignment. And the planetary alignment is shifting and changing all the time. So finding yourself a good astrology app, a good, some astrologers to follow on the YouTube, maybe some astrology, websites or newsletter that comes into your email inbox, whatever, but knowing how the planets are moving, because the planets are shifting and changing, and they have very strong energies that are actually influencing us every single day. And of course, if there's a certain planetary alignment that's matching up with how your natal chart is, you're going to feel it stronger than somebody else who doesn't have that planetary alignment matched up in their natal chart. And everything is constantly moving. So there's also zodiacal beings. This is part of the zodiac. There's these beings that are holding us, and that when we come in through our birth charts, that are kind of like our map and part of our mission and what we're doing in this life incarnation, that we have these celestial planetary energies holding us to. Fixed stars, all sorts of stuff are part of this. So learning about astrology, I strongly believe in the sidereal astrology, because it's really connected to the time in which you were born, where the stars were. So we have these zodiacal beings that we can connect with. We also can move up into star nations, where there's star beings. There's the Venusians of Venus and Jupiterians of Jupiter, and there's the Martians of Mars and the Mercurians of Mercury. And so even though they don't live, those planets that are in our solar system, they are they're kind of representing the energetic, because they are of form. They are of particle form, but these energy beings are not of the same particle form. They're of the wave form. So it's almost like they're landmarks of where you can find those energies, where the portal is to the Venusian world, right? So some people are out there talking about, we're coming from these different star planets. We're coming, or not planets, these different star nations. So there's these different beings out there that we can actually connect with. And there's all sorts of different light beings of consciousness that I can't even begin to describe all the different ones. So part of it is that, this is where we can begin to work more deeply with our ascended master beings, with our saints, and with these different kind of light beings who really come in with the love light consciousness of the benevolent, that which is helpful and good, right? And so this is also where we're moving ourselves up through harmonies and sound. And so we're going from the life force energy of the planet. And as we move up, this is what's called the life ether. And then we move into what's called sound ether. And this is the higher harmonics of vibration, of frequencies, but sound. And the sound really begins to bring us into these higher benevolent stages of higher consciousness. And we're moving up through this, and this is where we kind of begin to work with the pantheon of the old world gods and goddesses. And so they are not the highest level of god and goddess, but they're the ones that actually did come down throughout human history and actually interact with our earlier human forms. That is that is written in the scriptures, not the Christian scriptures, but the ancient texts and whatnot. That is real. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another break, and with that break, do what you need to do, and then when we get back, we're going to finish out going up through the rest of the hierarchies to understand how all of this is available to us and how we can use this for our own spiritual evolution and how we grow ourselves forward, connecting into these allies. So I'll see you back here in 2 minutes. All right.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, welcome back. So we're working the vertical cross, and we're moving ourselves up. And so we have moved through and past the star realm and our star beings. Now, some people may be from some of these star nations. Most people are human, and Earth is your star nation. That's where you're from. That's your planet, And so, but there are definitely some people who are not originally human here on the planet, guiding or trying to sabotage in some way. We'll talk about that another time. But again, so you could go back, you can be working. So you might have star guides that you can invite to guide you. And especially if you are a star being, who most people who are coming into consciousness right now, or who have been leading leading some sort of conscious, teachings and whatnot, they've been around for a while. And most of those people are not human. They've come to guide humanity forward and help with the wake up, this great awakening that's happening. Right. And so, so there's these different so the Venusians are love, so we can invite, star being to walk with us if that's what we're connected to really help teach us. Mercury, the Mercury and mercurial beings are very, communication, and, what do each of these represent? So we can ask and see if one will come and join us. I was talking about the pantheons of the lower gods. And so we have all the different pantheons from all previous history. So we can go through Sumerian gods, we can go through the Norse gods, Egyptian, there's many, many Celtic pantheons that are all part of that. And so this is where you can actually find the quality of a god or a goddess. And now when I work with my calling in the team, I usually call in a god and a goddess to help grow me in my own understanding of the qualities that they possess. What were they emulating in their god goddess to humanity? How do I learn more about that for myself? How do I embody that? How do I get to learn how to really kind of connect into those energies so that I, can be more of that, hold that more in my energy field? Again, this is about growing ourselves consciously. So meditation practice, whenever we're working, inviting them in to sit with us, guide us, or depending on what kind of work you do. So, people who work and do energy, who live in, whose bread and butter is energy work, I would like to believe they have a very solid team of these energy beings, and they know who they are, because you want to know who you're working with, right? And so then we also have our angels, and I talked about angels already. So going back just to, finding angel books, if there's certain types of angels that you really want to work with, there's angel decks and whatnot. And there's also words. There's like a whole deck. Well, it's called, I call it power words. And then there's this angel messages, which has like one word on a little teeny tiny, let me see if I have one. I might actually, because I brought some of when I do the changing of the guard, I brought some of that stuff out with me, but I may not have brought it. Nope. It's just a tiny little thing that I sometimes find a word on it. So these are power words. And the word can be something like trust, faith, spontaneity, love, sisterhood, brotherhood. It can be any word that you're calling in to actually grow you. So for example, I'm on this journey. My life is shifting and changing, and it's putting me into a whole new trajectory. And so the word that I'm working with for this year is faith. And faith is because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, how's this going to work out? Right. I don't know all the answers. I'm not going to know the answers. And so there's this relationship I'm building with faith. But in the process of working with this power word, I'm going to learn deeply about faith. And I'm going to learn what faith is and what faith isn't. So if I picked, my last year's word was expansiveness, I'm going to learn about how expansive I can be, and really how tight and unexpansive I can be, right? So you're going to get the whole, both sides of it and everything in between when you call in a power word. And it can be life altering. It can be like, holy moly, wow, how did that, like looking at how that grows us when we're conscious of these things, right? And then, so these are just some. Now, there's all sorts of different ones that we can connect to, but this I think is a good kind of beginning. And if you are just starting a practice of this, I would say call in 3 things. When I work with new clients and we're building their team, because that's one of the things that I do, is that, I would say call in a power word to work with a power word, and you could call in, something that's not too much, right? Because you want to give it your time. You want to give it your energy. You want to create relationship with it. And so in doing so, this is where, even if you meditate for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, or, and maybe you do it daily, or maybe you do it every 3 days or inconsistently, because we're all different, right? Creating a little altar, creating a little area where you can connect into that. And there's all sorts of different types of cards. I also use a lot of divination. And so sometimes these are fun cards. This is my friend's cards because I'm here at their house. And so just like here is this, let's see if I can get it in the camera a little bit more. And it says horseplay. And you can like take this deck of cards and you can get an oracle. Like this is an oracle, and it's got all sorts of different kinds of words on it. And maybe you want to pick a card that's going to represent what this year is going to be about for you. You can also do it with a tarot card. So a tarot card, but this is an oracle card. And so this one is, listen to this one. This one is slay the ego. And so this is definitely something that I could have on my altar and really work on my ego, work on how am I in when I'm connecting to people, because ego is about our wants and our desires. Ego is also about, like, wanting to get external validation and wanting to be seen and heard and known, and whatever, approval or whatever, right? And so looking at that within ourselves is a great way to have this be something that you put on your altar for the year, and that you're going to be working with this. Slay the ego. I love that. Or a tarot card. And this tarot card here is just a tarot deck, and you can shuffle it all up and you can pull a card. And this is, this card is the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune is really about the wheels are turning, and you're on your karmic path and where you're going to go. And if Wheel of Fortune is your card for the year, this is a very significant card to pay attention to. What is this year all about for you? Or maybe you pick another card, and the other card is, excuse me, I have to sometimes wear my glasses because it's hard to see. The 10 of Pentacles, right? And the 10 of Pentacles is achieving all that you've wanted, your wealth, your success, everything that you've been hoping and aspiring for. And this is going to be your guiding card for the year. Now, you can get, if you use cards and you put it back in your deck so your deck is full, and you can have something else that represents that. So divination is also a wonderful way for us to use those, to use allies, consciousness, ideas that's going to grow us for the year. And so as we come in the Chinese New Year, this Lunar New Year, for the Chinese New Year, it's the year of the snake. What does the snake represent, right? Calling it an animal guide. What does that animal represent? And working with that. And again, just find as many that you feel like you can handle to get started. You can even work with elements, fire, water, earth, air, or you can work with something within that, a volcano, a river. You could work with, the wind, or, you can work with elements to energetically understand the consciousness of what they represent. So we're coming to a close for our changing of the guard. Now, of course, the changing part is that we acknowledge this for the year, and at the end, and winter solstice is when we get to reflect on who we called in for the year. We thank them, and then we change the guard, and we honor them. We put them aside, or they're still part of our team, but now we grow our team by picking new ones. And so this is a time that I invite you, if you're watching this at a time where this works for you, to begin your allies, begin your team of allies, inviting those in. And this will be an opportunity to call in your first guard, so that next year you'll begin the process of changing the guard and growing your team as you go. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure to bring this information to you. If you would like to reach out to me, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me at all the places, Facebook, Instagram, at connected.dragonfly, I think, something like that. I'm so bad at social media, so, but something like that. Or you can reach out to me at my website at AndreaDragonfly.com. And anyway, this comes to you with just a happy Lunar New Year, whatever intentions you set for yourself. I wish you deep connection with whomever you call to you. So be well. I'll see you next week.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.